stop whatever you're doing right now, because what I'm about to share with you changed everything I thought I knew about anxiety. For years, I fought against my anxiety like it was my enemy. I tried breathing exercises, meditation apps, positive affirmations, and countless other techniques that promised relief. Some worked temporarily, but the anxiety always came back, often stronger than before. Then one day, sitting in my car during a panic attack, sweating and trembling, I had a realization so profound that my anxiety literally collapsed in seconds, not suppressed, not managed, but genuinely dissolved. And once you understand this, you'll never look at anxiety the same way again. Now, before I reveal this realization, I need you to understand something crucial. Everything you've been told about anxiety might be keeping you stuck in the cycle. We're taught that anxiety is something to overcome, something to fight, something to eliminate from our lives. We're given tools and strategies to battle against it, as if it's an invader that needs to be defeated. But here's the thing that nobody talks about. What if the very act of fighting anxiety is what keeps it alive? What if your resistance to anxiety is actually feeding it, giving it more power, making it grow stronger with every attempt to push it away? Think about this for a moment. When you feel anxiety rising in your body, what's your immediate reaction? You probably tense up, right? Your mind starts racing with thoughts like, "Not again," or "I need to make this stop," or "Why is this happening to me?" You might try to distract yourself, force yourself to calm down, or mentally argue with the anxious thoughts. Every single one of these reactions has something in common. They're all forms of resistance. They're all ways of saying, "This shouldn't be happening," or "I can't handle this," or "This is dangerous and needs to stop immediately." And here's where it gets really interesting. Your brain is designed to protect you. It's hardwired for survival. When you resist something, when you fight against something, when you treat something as a threat, your brain interprets that as a signal that there really is danger present. Your resistance confirms to your nervous system that yes, something is very wrong, and yes, we need to stay on high alert. This is why the more you fight anxiety, the more anxious you become. It's not because you're doing it wrong, or because you're broken, or because your anxiety is particularly stubborn. It's because resistance creates tension, and tension creates more anxiety, which creates more resistance, and the cycle continues spiraling upward. Now let me take you back to that moment in my car. I was in the middle of a full-blown panic attack. My heart was racing so fast I thought it might explode. My chest felt tight, like someone was sitting on it. My hands were trembling, and I couldn't catch my breath. The usual thoughts were flooding my mind. What if I'm having a heart attack? What if I lose control? What if this never stops? And I was doing what I always did. I was fighting it with everything I had. I was trying to slow my breathing, trying to think positive thoughts, trying to convince myself I was safe. But it wasn't working. In fact, it was getting worse. Then something shifted. I don't know if it was exhaustion or desperation or some deeper wisdom finally breaking through, but I suddenly stopped fighting. I didn't make a conscious decision to stop. It just happened. And in that moment of surrender, I had the realization. I realized that the anxiety itself wasn't the problem. The sensation of a racing heart, the tight chest, the trembling hands, these were just sensations. Uncomfortable sensations, yes, but just sensations nonetheless. The real suffering, the real agony, was coming from my resistance to these sensations. It was coming from my desperate need for them to stop, my fear of what they meant, my judgment that I shouldn't be feeling this way. And suddenly, just like that, I understood. Anxiety isn't the enemy. My relationship with anxiety is the enemy. My resistance to anxiety is what transforms uncomfortable sensations into unbearable suffering. This might sound like a small distinction, but I promise you, it changes everything. Because once you see this clearly, once you really understand it in your bones, anxiety loses its power over you. Not because the sensations disappear, though they often do, but because you're no longer adding suffering on top of discomfort. Let me explain this more deeply, because this is the key to everything. There are two components to what we call anxiety. First, there's the physical sensation. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, your breathing changes, stress hormones flood your system. This is your body's natural alarm system doing what it's designed to do. It's uncomfortable, no question about that, but it's not inherently unbearable. Animals experience this same physical response all the time. A deer hears a twig snap. Its nervous system activates. It either runs or realizes there's no threat, and the activation dissipates. Simple, natural, no problem. But humans have a second component. We have a mind that tells stories about these sensations. We interpret them, judge them, predict catastrophic outcomes, and most importantly, we resist them. We add layers of meaning and terror on top of the basic physical sensations. This means something is wrong with me. This means I'm weak. This means I'm going to lose control. This will never end. I can't handle this. These thoughts, this resistance, this is where the real suffering comes from. This is what transforms natural physical activation into what we call anxiety or panic. So here's the realization that makes anxiety collapse. You don't need to fight the sensations. You don't need to make them go away. You don't need to fix yourself or cure yourself or become someone who never feels these sensations. You just need to change your relationship with the sensations. You need to stop resisting them. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, that sounds nice in theory, but how do I actually do that? How do I stop resisting something that feels so terrible? This is the beautiful part. You don't stop resisting through effort. You don't force yourself to not resist. That would just be another form of resistance. Instead, you do something that sounds almost too simple to work. You allow the sensations to be there. You stop fighting them. You open yourself to the experience no matter how uncomfortable it is. You say yes to what's already happening instead of no. And this isn't about liking the sensations or wanting them to continue. It's simply about acknowledging that they're already here, they're already happening, and your resistance isn't actually stopping them anyway. It's only making you suffer more. Think of it like this. Imagine you're at the beach and a wave knocks you over. You have two choices. You can flail and fight against the water, tensing your entire body, panicking, desperately trying to force your head above the surface. This approach uses tremendous energy, creates panic, and often makes the situation worse. Or you can relax, let yourself go with the wave for a moment, and naturally float back to the surface. The wave passes either way, but your experience of it is completely different depending on whether you resist or allow. Anxiety is the same. The sensations are going to be there for as long as they're there. Your resistance doesn't actually stop them. It just makes you suffer while they're present. But when you allow them, when you stop adding resistance on top of discomfort, something remarkable happens. The sensations are still there, but the suffering collapses. And without the suffering, without the panic about the panic, without the fear of the fear, the actual sensations tend to dissipate much more quickly. Because remember, your resistance was sending a signal to your nervous system that there was real danger, which kept the alarm system activated. When you stop resisting, when you show your nervous system that you're not threatened by these sensations, the alarm naturally starts to turn off. Now I want to be very clear about something, because this is where a lot of people get confused. Allowing anxiety is not the same as giving up or resigning yourself to a life of suffering. It's not about being passive or weak. In fact, it takes tremendous courage to allow uncomfortable sensations instead of fighting them. And allowing is not the same as wanting. You don't have to want anxiety to allow it. You can still prefer to feel calm. You can still hope the sensations pass quickly. Allowing simply means you're not actively pushing against what's already happening in the present moment. Here's a practical way to understand this. Right now, as you're watching this video, there are probably sounds around you. Maybe traffic outside, maybe a refrigerator humming, maybe people talking in another room. These sounds are there whether you want them or not. You probably weren't even noticing them until I mentioned them. Now you're aware of them. But you're not suffering about them. You're not thinking these sounds shouldn't be here, or I need these sounds to stop immediately or I'll lose my mind. You're just allowing them to be there. They're part of the background of your experience, neither good nor bad, just present. This is the relationship you can have with anxiety sensations. They can be there, they can be uncomfortable, but they don't have to be a crisis. They don't have to mean something is terribly wrong. They don't have to send you into a panic spiral. They can just be there like background noise while you continue with your life. And the more you practice this allowing, the more you prove to your nervous system that these sensations aren't dangerous, the less frequently they show up. Because your nervous system learns that there's nothing to be alarmed about. But here's what makes this challenging. Your mind will tell you that allowing anxiety is dangerous. It will say things like, if I don't fight this, it will get worse. Or if I accept this, it will never go away. Or allowing anxiety means I'm giving up on feeling better. These thoughts are believable. They feel true. But they're backwards. It's the fighting that makes it worse. It's the resistance that makes it stick around. It's the non-acceptance that keeps you suffering. So what does this look like in practice? Let's say you feel anxiety rising. Your heart starts to race. Your thoughts start to spiral. Instead of immediately trying to stop it, fix it, or distract yourself from it, you pause. You take a breath, not to calm yourself down, but just to create a moment of awareness. And you say to yourself something like, okay, anxiety is here. I feel it in my chest, in my thoughts, in my body. I don't like it, but I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to let it be here for as long as it needs to be here. Then you feel the sensations fully. You notice where they are in your body. You observe them with curiosity rather than fear. What does the racing heart actually feel like? What about the tight chest, the trembling hands? You let yourself experience these sensations without the story, without the meaning you usually attach to them. Just raw sensation. And you keep breathing, not to make the anxiety go away, but just to stay present with what's happening. Your mind will probably offer all kinds of scary thoughts. What if this gets worse? What if I'm having a panic attack? What if people notice? Let those thoughts be there too. Don't fight them. Don't try to replace them with positive thoughts. Just notice them as thoughts, as mental events, not as truth or reality or predictions of the future. They're just thoughts, arising and passing like clouds in the sky. Some thoughts are stormy, some are peaceful, but they're all just weather patterns in the mind. And here's what happens. Without your resistance adding fuel to the fire, the anxiety sensations begin to peak and then naturally subside. It might take 30 seconds, it might take 5 minutes, it might take longer, but it will pass. Everything passes eventually. Sensations are temporary by nature. They arise, they peak, they fade. This is the natural cycle that your resistance was interrupting. By allowing, by not fighting, you let this natural cycle complete itself. But even more importantly, something shifts in your relationship with anxiety. You realize through direct experience that you can handle these sensations. You see that they're not actually dangerous, even though they're uncomfortable. You discover that you don't need to control them or fix them or make them go away to be okay. And this realization is what truly sets you free, because once you know you can handle anxiety, once you know it's not a threat, it loses its power over you. You stop living in fear of fear. You stop restricting your life to avoid situations that might trigger anxiety. You start living freely again. Now, I need to address something important. This isn't about never feeling anxiety again. That's not realistic and that's not the goal. Even people who fully understand this realization still experience anxiety sometimes. Life is stressful. The nervous system responds to stress. This is normal. This is being human. The difference is that anxiety is no longer a problem. It's just an experience, one of many experiences you have throughout your day. Sometimes you feel calm, sometimes you feel anxious, sometimes you feel happy, sometimes you feel sad. All of these are just different flavors of human experience, none of them permanent, none of them problems to be solved. This realization also doesn't mean you should stop taking care of yourself. If you have an anxiety disorder that requires treatment, please work with a qualified professional. If medication helps you, keep taking it. If therapy is beneficial, continue with it. This realization isn't a replacement for proper care. It's a fundamental shift in understanding that can work alongside any other treatment or support you're receiving. In fact, most effective therapy approaches like acceptance and commitment therapy or mindfulness-based therapies are built on this exact principle of allowing rather than fighting. I also want to talk about what happens after you have this realization, because understanding it intellectually is one thing, but embodying it, living it, making it your automatic response, that takes practice. Your habitual pattern has been to resist anxiety for years, maybe decades. Your mind has grooved this pathway deeply. So even after you understand this intellectually, you'll probably still catch yourself fighting against anxiety sometimes. That's okay. That's part of the process. When you notice yourself resisting, you don't need to judge yourself or feel like you've failed. You just gently remind yourself of the realization and choose to allow instead. Think of it like learning a new skill. When you first learn to ride a bike, you have to think about every movement. Balance, pedaling, steering, it all requires conscious attention. But with practice, it becomes automatic. Your body just knows how to ride a bike without your mind having to direct every action. This is the same. At first, choosing to allow anxiety instead of fighting it requires conscious effort and awareness. But the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, allowing becomes your automatic response. And here's something beautiful that happens as you practice this. You start to notice that resistance shows up in other areas of your life too. Maybe you resist uncomfortable emotions like sadness or anger. Maybe you resist physical discomfort. Maybe you resist situations that are outside your control, and you realize that the same principle applies everywhere. Resistance creates suffering, allowing creates peace. Not a peace that requires perfect circumstances, but a peace that can exist even in the midst of difficulty. This is what the ancient wisdom traditions have been teaching for thousands of years. Buddhism calls it non-attachment. Taoism calls it wu-wei, or non-action. Stoicism calls it accepting what you cannot control. Different words, different frameworks, but the same fundamental truth. Fighting against reality creates suffering. Accepting reality, even when it's uncomfortable, brings freedom. And nowhere is this more immediately obvious than with anxiety. Because with anxiety, you can see the shift happen in real time. You can feel the suffering collapse the moment you stop resisting. So let me bring this all together. The realization that makes anxiety collapse in seconds is this. Anxiety itself is not the problem. Your resistance to anxiety is the problem. The sensations of anxiety are uncomfortable, but not dangerous. The suffering comes from fighting the sensations, from believing you need them to stop immediately, from thinking something is terribly wrong. When you stop fighting, when you allow the sensations to be there, the suffering collapses. Not necessarily the sensations themselves, though they often diminish quickly, but the suffering, the agony, the panic about the panic. That collapses immediately. This changes everything. Because once you see that you're creating the suffering through resistance, you have a choice. You can continue to resist and suffer, or you can allow and be free. Not free from ever feeling anxious sensations, but free from being controlled by them, from living in fear of them, from having your life restricted by them. And this choice is always available to you in every moment. You're never more than one choice away from freedom. You just have to choose allowing over resisting. I want to end with this. Right now, in this moment, you probably don't feel particularly anxious. Maybe you do, but probably you're relatively calm watching this video. And your mind might be thinking, this sounds great, but when I'm actually anxious, it's different. It's too intense. I won't be able to allow it. I understand that thought. I had that same thought. But here's what I learned. The intensity of the sensation doesn't matter. Whether the anxiety is mild or severe, the principle is the same. Resistance creates suffering, allowing creates freedom. And in fact, the more intense the anxiety, the more dramatic the relief when you stop resisting. So I encourage you to experiment with this. The next time you feel anxiety arising, remember this realization. Remember that the sensations aren't the enemy, your resistance is. Try allowing instead of fighting, just as an experiment. See what happens. Don't take my word for it. Discover it for yourself through direct experience, because this is something you need to experience to fully understand. No amount of words can replace the direct knowing that comes from allowing anxiety and watching it collapse. And if you find this helpful, if this realization shifts something for you, share it with others who struggle with anxiety, because so many people are trapped in the same cycle of fighting and suffering, not knowing there's another way. You might change someone's life by sharing this understanding. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being open to a different perspective on anxiety. And remember, you're not broken, you don't need to be fixed, you just need to stop fighting the part of you that's already whole.